there's a point that both parties are heated and the temperature needs to come down. And I thought this was the right decision. They understand how serious we are about the electricity and the tariffs. And rather than going back and forth and having threats to each other, we have both agreed, let cooler heads prevail.
There's a very strong man in Canada who said he was going to charge a surcharge or a tariff on electricity coming into our country. He has called and he said he's not going to do that. Okay, he's not going to do that. And it would have been a very bad thing if he did, and he's not going to do that, so I respect that.
Donald Trump's trade war with this country was all over the map today. It started with the U.S. president threatening to double steel and aluminum tariffs set to take effect tonight, and ended with that no longer being the case after Ontario Premier Doug Ford walked back his export tax on electricity. Ford meets with incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney for breakfast tomorrow. Then he says federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc as well, are headed to D.C. to meet with Trump's Commerce Secretary Thursday and talk about, quote, a renewed USMCA. Still with me? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about all of that. With me tonight, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is here. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former leader of the federal NDP, Tom Mulcair, is with us as well, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief, Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Good to see you. Benzie, I'll start with you because I listened to your questions to the Premier today as he was making that announcement that they were going to remove the export tax. What is what can you tell us about this meeting, and is it a win, or what actually is going on?
You know what, Vashi, I think it is a win for Premier Ford. Remember, he's the leader of a subnational jurisdiction, and the President of the United States was talking about him today on that weird front lawn thing with Elon Musk, talking about Ford as a very strong man in Canada, without mentioning him by name, of course. But it was a significant victory for Mr. Ford, I think, because he's been on U.S. cable news channels day in, day out for weeks now, saying that, look, we're going to shut off electricity, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it will be bad for Americans, it will be bad for Canadians. And I think it's having an impact. And Mr. Ford, it was Howard Lutnick that phoned Ford today and invited him down with Dominic LeBlanc on Thursday. And I think that's a good meeting for the federal Liberal government and for the provincial progressive Conservative government at Queen's Park. Ford's meeting with Mark Carney here in Toronto tomorrow, not in Ottawa, but Carney is coming to Toronto, and that's also not insignificant, I think. So I think if you're Doug Ford, you're thinking, wow, all I did was threaten to cut off the electricity, to charge 25% more to 1.5 million customers in 3 states. And they noticed. They noticed that threat, so it tells you that they listen to heavy-handedness.
Yeah, I wonder what the takeaway from that is, Lisa, because they still are imposing, to be clear, the baseline 25% tariff on all aluminum and steel. They're just not doubling it to 50%, and now this meeting is on the table. I thought the rhetoric from President Trump was interesting. Very strong man. I respect him. Is this sort of axiom, like you stand up, you have to be strong, and standing up to a bully, you have to fight fire with fire? Is that what we're seeing unfold? I'm not sure.
I don't know. You're asking me to interpret Donald Trump's motives, and I pass on that one. That's not my gig. But what I will tell you is that if you take a look at what's happening in the U.S. media, very much so, the framing of the issue is it's going to be painful for Americans, but Canada's been ripping off the United States for many years now. They need to come to the table to do a new deal. And by imposing these tariffs, Donald Trump is going to be dragging Canada to the table. And then there's another part of it, which is these tariffs in the meantime, by the way, are going to allow you to have permanent tax cuts. And that's the quid pro quo. That's the give and take. We're going to put tariffs on the border. You're going to feel a little bit of pain. But Americans, I'm going to give you tax cuts that are going to be permanent in nature. It is going to be really hard for any Canadian politician to make it into the hearts, minds, and pocketbooks of an American citizen on this stuff. And I find it really difficult when I hear the rhetoric coming from the Premier of Ontario in the United States along the lines of blaming Donald Trump and calling out Donald Trump, because it may have worked out this time, Vashi, but it may not work out the next time.
Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that Dominic LeBlanc is going to be the adult in the room, because I think that Doug Ford was enjoying his role of Captain Canada so much that he was starting to lose it in the lights. He was out there with his own stuff. We're not sure if and when and how much he coordinated with Ottawa. This is an existential crisis for the whole country. I, like a lot of people, was actually happy to see somebody in Canada standing up, as Doug Ford did, saying, that he was going to push back on this. But when he accepted immediately, to do a reverse salto and say, no, I've just won, and now I'm going to go to Washington and meet them with Dominic LeBlanc, you could sense that there are a couple of adults present. I just mentioned Dominic LeBlanc. How about Howard Lutnick? I mean, listening to him is like trying to interpret the riddle and figure out the riddle of the Sphinx. He's using such careful language. He always starts off by saying what a genius Donald Trump is, and then he starts the opposite of what Trump said 15 minutes earlier. So he's trying to get a handle on this thing. He knows that it's crazy to tell the average MAGA hat wearing, pickup truck driving American that their Silverado is now going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars more. And Trump can rationalize it, but again, at the end of the day today, his press conference that with Elon Musk was taking place just as the markets were closing, and the more it got bizarre, all of a sudden they were in positive territory. At the end of the day, they all sunk to negative territory. So he can bully almost anything. He can't bully the markets, and that's what he's starting to learn, and he does keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and the markets have been so volatile. As you mentioned, yesterday the NASDAQ had its worst day since 2022. Today there was a sell-off in the morning, some bounced back, and then immediately following more trade talk, Brian, they went down as well. I take Lisa's point, trying to understand, though, what he's going to do based on what's happening, what Trump's going to do feels impossible. In this meeting, paint a picture for us of, we have an incoming prime minister, an outgoing prime minister, maybe a different prime minister in 6 weeks. Doug Ford saying he's wanting to talk about USMCA renegotiating it. Dominic LeBlanc at the table. We don't even know if he's finance minister as of Friday. What can we understand from all of this?
Well, I'm actually going to go a little against what Tom said. I mean, I think he's a genius and everything, don't get me wrong, but I want to maybe
Tom or
say...
Ford?
No, Tom here, of course. No, I actually think Ford has done a great job, and I like what he's still doing. And let me explain why. First off, I've said this numerous times on this panel, there's been a bit of a vacuum. It's not ideal. It comes with the Westminster system. When a prime minister resigns, we have a leadership, all that stuff. Certainly the timing is not ideal, to say the least. So there's a bit of a vacuum, and I think Doug Ford had done a really good job of stepping up. And to be clear, he has, yes, the sort of credibility to do so by being the premier of the most populous province. But more importantly, he is the chair of the Council of the Federation. So if there is somebody that is to speak for the premiers, it is him in this moment. So that's serendipitous for sure, but let's take it. The other thing that I really like about it is he's a conservative. So I like the message that he's going with, Dominic LeBlanc. He's doing the messages that he's doing. It's a liberal, it's a conservative. The feds, the provinces, I think that sends an implicit message as well. And look, I think he has the right approach too. I really do. I don't think Canadians necessarily want the tariffs tomorrow, but they want action that's going to lead to this being resolved in a positive way for Canada. So the idea of threatening tariffs, the idea of then getting a meeting, then maybe getting some alleviation on some other stuff, that's all a part of, I think, this dynamic. Look, I'm not a part of privy to the conversation. I don't know if it's the right move ultimately, but certainly am more than open to the idea that we start to say we're going to do something and then maybe we pull back if we see them moving. That's probably what we're going to have to do in this situation. So I actually really like what I'm seeing, and I think Doug Ford's done it very well. And he's got the legitimacy, again, for all the reasons I mentioned, especially the fact that he's representing the premiers as the Council of the Federation. But he still goes above and beyond to say, I'm not speaking on behalf of all premiers. They're doing their actions. And it does, I'm not privy, but it does feel like he's trying to be in lockstep with the feds, which I appreciate as well.
Well, as Benzie, as you said, he's meeting with Carney tomorrow morning. He has a lot of conversations with LeBlanc. What is Ford's office communicating around taking this meeting? What do they think will come of it, Benzie.
With the meeting with Lutnick or the meeting with Carney? I think they're happy with
No,
both.
sorry. No. Yeah, Lutnick.
Well, I mean, I think dialogue is good. I mean, Mr. Ford comes from a business background. He is fond of telling us. And he said in negotiations, you can't just, be screaming and yelling at each other all the time. You have to, at some point, reach an impasse and say, look, this is bad for both of us. It's bad for business. I mean, he is a bit perplexed by this, by Trump's tariff talk, as we all are, really, because the talk about making his tax cuts permanent is an idealized kind of thing, but it's not realistic in a political. In the reality of how politics is, it's just not possible to replace all of that revenue with tariffs. It's just not logical. Mr. Trump's polling numbers are going down as fast as his stock market. So the midterms of next year will be very bad for the Republican Party if he continues on this track. So I think there is an injection of reality, and I think Ford is delighted that Carney is coming to meet with him tomorrow. Ford was the first person, I think, first political leader in the country to congratulate Mark Carney publicly on Sunday night after he became Liberal leader. That was significant. By the way, Pierre Poilievre has still not congratulated Doug Ford for being reelected on February 27th. I asked yesterday.
Oh, how dynamic it all is.